Hey there guys, what's going on? It's Gale right here, back again on the 5-9 channel to talk about the demo of Project Triangle Strategy and my thoughts on it. Of course, this game was announced at the most recent Nintendo Direct and developed and produced by the people over at Square Enix and is the spiritual successor to Octopath Traveler. However, unlike the JRPG Octopath Traveler, this game at its core is a strategy RPG similar in vein to the games like Fire Emblem and Final Fantasy Tactics. Each unit in this game has their own class/role with varying levels of usability and utility. This allows for playstyles with a more defensive style or offensive role depending from player to player, and requires a little bit more thought and strategy as well as effort from the average player. This game also offers a blend of 2D and 3D graphics to give a beautiful 2.5D graphic style that yields a sight to enjoy throughout the game. However, one might wonder, well, I mean, if it's just like any other tactical RPG, what's the point of me buying another one? Well, this game offers a very unique addition in the form of what I personally like to call a democracy system, leading the game to be filled with a lot of choice-filled consequences and ramifications, and the game itself calls it the scales of conviction, and you as the main player have to persuade and convince other people on the council to sway them to a decision you may want to choose. Sometimes it may work, sometimes it may not, which leads to either it going your way or not. So effectively, there may be a chance you might not get everything you want in this game, of course. This demo itself thrusts you into the middle section of the game, letting you play through chapters 6 and 7. To me, it felt a bit odd considering I had no connection with the characters themselves, so the context is a bit missing there. During this section, the story that the game provided felt extremely serious and took place in one of its tense moments. When playing the demo, as I mentioned, I was confused for the most part, especially with how much was going on, and at the same time, you could easily just gloss over it. But for the time being, of course, and take some points from it to understand the characters, but the focus was entirely on the gameplay and the environments more so. Like mentioned above, the gameplay is very tactical, similar to Fire Emblem and Final Fantasy Tactics. This is a great sign, meaning it's not overly complicated, but it also has its own niche and gimmicks. For example, being able to backstab enemies for critical hits, or being able to sandwich an enemy for 2 hits to effectively combo an enemy. Fair warning, this could also happen to you, as it happened to me quite often when I played the demo, and this adds a lot more to the tactical side of things, so you have to make sure you position your characters correctly, make sure you're not getting sandwiched, you're sandwiching the opponent. It's kind of complex in that sense. Chapter 6 relies on showing the beauty of the game as well as the gameplay, like I mentioned, but Chapter 7 is where you start getting into the smaller, unique parts of the game, and especially the democracy system as mentioned. And for me, personally, as a huge fan of choice-based games, that was particularly exciting. You play as a young crown prince named Serenoa, as I mentioned, and at the start of the second available chapter, you and your crew are holed up in a castle. Basically, you're bracing for assault from a nearby country where you're housing the Prince of Roland, or not Prince of Roland, but Prince Roland himself from Ace Frost, the country you're trying to brace yourself from, and he is a member of your crew currently, so they want to get him, and you have the choice as the crown prince of your region or the lord of your region to basically make a decision whether to hand him over and avoid conflict or save him and brace yourself for assault. It's effectively you hand him over or you don't. You go around town after that, see what the people of your town think, figure out what you can to convince your council members, and you figure out whether or not you should hand over your friend to the enemies or save him by keeping him around, but at the same time trying to defend your whole country. Now, this adds a huge element, which I believe is quite rare, because this is the first time I've seen in a very recent title, I would say, that you go around town, you talk to the people, they influence your decision, and then you can influence the AI within the game in the council to kind of work alongside you and your decision. It's interesting. It's very, very interesting, because on the left-hand side of the screen as well, you can actually tell how many people are for the decision or against the decision, and this allows you as the player to choose which side or which people you need to sway or which people you don't need to sway realistically. So once you gather the information from the town members or the town people or the townsfolk, You go back to your council, and this time you have to be in a council of like around 7 to 8 people, and you go around convincing the people you need to convince. They sometimes are undecided, basically, you know, still in the middle of deciding whether or not to be convinced by your decision or your choice, or they stick to their decision and you don't talk to them and they follow up on that said decision that they have already chosen, right? So, like mentioned, this could go either way. Sometimes you may not be able to convince them entirely. Like I personally failed on one option. I couldn't convince one council member, and yet I managed to convince the rest of them. So it did go in my favor, but there is that opportunity that maybe they don't get entirely convinced. Having done this and being able to sway the decision my way personally was one of the best feelings, quite frankly speaking. The demo itself is nearly 3 hours long, and it felt a bit overwhelming, especially considering the lack of information and the context for what was playable, right? So for me, it was just like I was just going through and struggling through a 3-hour demo, which I had no clue on. Had it been maybe the first 3 hours of the game, maybe then it would have been completely different. And as I mentioned, at the same time, there's so much potential, and that's what really shined throughout this demo. It is genuinely exciting, and I'm extremely excited to play an SRPG. Since I haven't personally played one since, well, the last enjoyable one was Fire Emblem Three Houses. So having the factor that it is a new SRPG that is really, really well made, especially with the addition of all the unique systems and gimmicks, is a massive positive, and I'm really looking forward to it. However, I will also mention that there are still some noticeable issues with some of the textures and graphics, with trees sometimes having some seizures effectively and shaking at some ridiculous pace. But this game is due to release in 2022, giving it more than enough time to be worked on, and it has infinite amount of possibilities of it being drastically changed even. I feel like there could have been also better organization of how the layouts are in game, as well as some of the text, because the font size of the text, oh my god, as someone who's blind, as you can see by me wearing glasses, it was a struggle to read and understand the text, especially with the style of old English that the game uses, right? So those are some of the negatives I have. The game will also be featuring a player survey for people to fill out, which is pretty impressive to me personally. I'm looking forward to filling it out. So hopefully they do take into account a lot of the changes that I personally, or the general gamers that have played this demo, you know, want particularly, right? So definitely that is something to look forward to, and I personally would highly recommend this to people who love strategy RPGs to give this game a shot themselves and are generally interested in trying out the spiritual successor to Octopath Traveler. I will also, however, say that we do need to see more. For the average player, I feel that this game will not interest a lot of people. SRPGs rarely do, but with that being said, you know, the game's gimmicks and unique style of decision making may attract a new set of fans, which would be amazing. With that being said, thank you all so much for tuning into this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Comment down below if you guys are interested in this game or genre and what your thoughts are. With that being said, it's been Gale Riot signing out.